Okay, everybody, I think we are recording. Thank you very much for those of you who are joining us live tonight. This is the pre-trip meeting in advance of the PLP 9 Rocky Mountain Field Schools, plural. So we are going to go over our usual pre-trip items today, and that includes, realize I don't have control of everything. All the information that we will share on our parent portal. So parents, hopefully you bookmark parentcentral.ccove.ca. We will update this page with all the details we share tonight and any late breaking news or announcements on the dedicated field school page, which you can find there. If you have cameras on or you're able to see us, you can see many of the PLP team is with us tonight. So we have, do you guys want to introduce yourselves, or should I just introduce you? Okay. Okay. So we have Cody, Emily, Petra, and myself are online, and our Seacoast principal, Sarah Best, is also online as well. Julia Caddy is not able to join us tonight for emergent reasons. So as a cautionary tale, she has suggested that you be very careful with the use of a Madeleine in your kitchen. You know what that means. So she is she is probably getting stitches at this moment. So nothing too serious, we hope. All right, so we're going to summarize all that information. Oh, that's probably an overshare. I don't know, but we will summarize all that information.
Mandolin? You meant mandolin.
Yeah, what did I say? Not like a cookie.
Yeah.
I had to put it in the chat to clarify.
Mandolin.
No,
Do not use a mandolin.
Not the bluegrass instrument either. All right.
Focus. Okay. Thank you.
We're gonna go.
We are going to cover the learning objectives for the trip. We always, of course, like to start with that, the learning. Talk about some safety and protocols, behavior expectations. Those are kind of the required statutory parts of the meeting. Then we'll go over an overview of the practicalities and answer any questions that people have live for us this afternoon or early evening. So with that, I'm going to pass it over, I think, to Emily.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. All right, perfect. Who's going to speak a little bit about what the field study and the school, the project that it's part of and that it builds on.
Okay, thank you very much. So, of course, all of our projects, I'm so nervous, my dog's going to bark. He will. As with all of our projects, of course, we are driving our inquiry on the road up to a driving question. So our driving question for all of the learning that will be supported on this trip is, how has the geography of the West shaped who we are? So our inquiry will ask, how have we been shaped by place? And at the same time, examine the costs to the environment as we have worked to shape it. So this is a project that is grounded in a lot of the history of the West, while still looking, of course, at kind of the identity and the unique identity that revolves around the Rockies. Of course, going through the Rockies, the Canadian Pacific Railroad, of course, as well as identifying some of our own identity as people who live in the West. So this has to do with geography and history, but it is a review of worldview and the physical environment, economics. As we're heading on the road as well, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for communication and, of course, getting to know people at our different stops and locations, experts at the place. So a lot of active listening and formulating interview questions as well. And learners will also be asked to plan out. We haven't quite revealed what their final product is going to be to them, but they will be putting together a final reflection of their learning on the trip in one place that will take planning and design and story finding, and of course, using our experts at our locations to find the answer to our driving question. These are some of the big ideas and curriculum straight from Social Studies 9, the BC curriculum, and English 9. So for English, we've chosen to really focus on listening and speaking to a variety of audiences. And yes, learners, if you hear this, just like Oregon, if you came on the trip, you will be interviewing strangers. So we will practice a little bit before you go, but you will definitely be asked to do that. In regard to social studies, again, focusing on the physical environment and just how much it has shaped the West politically and socially and economically, looking at the 5 themes of geography. And of course, Maker is involved with this as well. Additional skills and sequencing using their iPads and their design thinking to create their final product, and really to find powerful stories while we're on the road using still images and really amping up our moving images skills this year as well. Curricular competencies. So the whole project, as well as, of course, grounded in the driving question, students are really going to be asked to focus on 2 curricular competencies. The first one, which is questioning. So really thinking about how they can use questioning to share ideas, to go further, to research information from a variety of sources. And that goes as well before we're on the trip, while we're on the trip, and after we get home, as well as taking some of those answers that we find or where those questions will lead us and processing those questions and those answers as well. So thinking critically, creatively, and reflectively with a variety of strategies to process the ideas that they hopefully will find while on this trip. I'm very excited to see of course, their final products as well.
Okay, fantastic. All right, we want to just spend a few minutes speaking about some of the safety protocols so that we have a successful and uneventful, at least from this regard, experience. And that begins with our daily health check, sort of an experience we've gotten used to in recent times. So what we really encourage, and learners who were with us in Oregon did this very well, but just like being in close contact with teachers and, you know, letting us know if things don't feel right, if they're not, how they're doing, and letting us know if things don't seem normal. So this is really based on regular sleep, regular diet, lots of water, protection from the sun, all things that can actually be hard to do with a trip such as this, where you don't necessarily get to, you might have to wake up earlier than you are used to, or you might not get to go to sleep as early as you are used to. Same thing with diet, right? You might eat at different times or different foods. So all of that can add stress to the experience. So people who are with us again in Oregon have a bit of a small taste of what a field school is like. This trip is a little bit similar, but also a little bit different in how things are structured, and that's partly what we're going to cover tonight. But we just want to emphasize the importance of considering these things. Like before, we want to make sure that we have as much information as possible from families to make sure everyone does have a happy and successful trip. So we are asking if there are any dietary requirements or restrictions, allergies, religious requirements, whatever the case may be when it comes to food. We would ask you to communicate that and as much detail in advance as possible. And there are reasons for that that make this trip even a little bit more unique that I'll talk about in a few minutes. Same thing with medication. We ask that any medication that students are bringing with them, whether it be prescription or even just over the counter, that we have some awareness of what they have. If it's prescription medication or otherwise that they routinely take and are familiar with, that's totally fine. There's no problem with that. They can keep that themselves. They can have that themselves. We just like to have awareness of what people have with them and any other need to knows that you'd like teachers to be aware of. We're asking parents to send that to Ms. McWilliam as a point of contact, and just not everyone might be aware. Ms. McWilliam is formerly Miss Maxwell, so she has embraced a new identity, or an evolved identity, I guess. So I believe, Emily, your old email address still works, right? It still reaches you if they do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The Maxwell ones come to me.
Yeah, so she has a new address, but the other one will reach her as well. And Emily will share that information with all the teachers on the trip as well, so that we all have that need to know information. So it should just be the point of collection for that. Safety in general is based on trust, and we're moving forward with planning for this trip because of the success and the experience we had with students in Oregon. So we just sort of have to say this because we have to, but any unsafe behavior or any contraventions of school codes of conduct may result in a student being sent home at a parent or guardian's expense. We don't anticipate that happening. Petra, would you like to speak a little bit to what the school's expectations are, and then also some of what our PLP expectations are?
Yeah, you guys were, all our students that we took to Oregon were amazing on both Oregon versions. I joked with them today. I think they almost knew to finish the sentence, Brian, that flexibility is a tortoise trait, which we definitely experienced, which is kind of a saying we have in PLP, that they definitely experienced on that Oregon 2 trip. And so everyone in terms of the school level of behavior was awesome. You guys were safe. You conducted yourself in manners that brought credit to SECO, and we were super proud of the work you had done. And we didn't have any non-compliance issues that resulted in discipline that we would not expect. And we would expect that great behavior to continue on this trip as well. We will be reviewing it in class again, of course, and talking about that as well. So that's on the school side. On the PLP side, which I think is Brian's next slide, we talked a lot about being a team and a community, which is doubly more so now this year that we have you together all the time. So we're really excited about that, because I don't know that parents are really aware of that, or was that as an issue. So, you know, for last year, we had the 2 groups of humanities going on at time, and then they came together in Maker. This year, there's only 1 group during humanities. So PLP 9 will be working together all the time, except when they have science, which is still 2 groups because we have 1 teacher. And when we're on this trip, even though we're going as 2 groups, the expectation is they're a team. So just like we did with Oregon, even though 2 different groups are away, 1 group at home, we're expecting that learning to continue. And that really happens because we trust and respect each other, and we want our students to trust and respect us. And that things happen or don't happen for many different reasons. And everyone accepted that and rolled with it last year. So we would expect that to continue this year. Yeah. Because, as you know now for sure, field schools are school, and that will be more clear than ever every year. Our expectations in terms of your behavior and abilities go up, which is the way it should be in school. And of course, because we know you, we don't have to reset those expectations. We know what you're capable of. We know the great things you did. We all were there in the spring exhibition celebrating all your hard work from Oregon, and we're going to do that exact same thing after Alberta. We're going to celebrate all your hard work and be so proud of all the great work you did. So we'll go through in school again, that PLP Field School Code of Conduct, to talk about all those things that are respect and the norms of behavior that go with us when we're traveling, and we expect them to go forward this time as well.
Thank you. I was slightly remiss as part of the introduction to say, if parents or students have questions, you can feel free to drop those into the chat, or if you want to just actually wave at us on the camera, we can acknowledge you that way too and have you speak. So feel free, and the other teachers will be watching those and addressing them as we go. So save them for the end or as we go, as you please. All right, let's get into the overview here. As Petra just mentioned, we are planning to split into 2 groups, and I think everyone's pretty familiar with now how that works out. And it has worked out quite nicely and cleanly, where we have 24 students on each of the 2 trips. We are going to run these trips back to back. So departing on Saturday, September 16th, promptly at 6:30 a.m. So we would ask students to plan to arrive at the school 6:15 so that we can load vehicles and depart on time. Right now, the plan would be to return back to the school 1 week later at 6:30 p.m. approximately, depending on how that day plays out, traffic, et cetera, but we have done a version of this trip many, many times, so we're pretty familiar with how the moving pieces work, so we anticipate that being pretty close to the plan. So those are the 2 dates. Hopefully that's familiar to everybody at this point. A more detailed and full itinerary is very close to being finalized, and it will appear for students in Basecamp and for parents on the Parent Central Field Study portal. And it'll be similar to Oregon. It'll be broken down like almost minute to minute with kind of like where we're going, what we're doing, and expectations on what's happening and when. So that'll be shared very, very soon. Okay. On the practicality side, transportation, Seco bus maybe, and this has been, like, as Petra said, flexibility is a tortoise trait. We have to be flexible, and we had a bit of a curveball thrown at us just this afternoon. So this is late breaking news. The bus spent a very nice spring and summer in Oregon, and I actually went back to Oregon just before school started and brought it back, having had its complete new transmission sent down there, installed and replaced, and it drove home like a dream, I have to say. It was very nice. And it then went here at home into its regular inspection / maintenance, where it gets certified every year for school use. Just late this afternoon, Ms. Best did receive a phone call that, and we're not 100% even sure what they found or what the situation is, but just basically advice that they did discover something that is requiring a closer look / repair, where we need to collect more details. The information was actually a little bit sketchy, but we were cautioned that it may not be back in our hands in time for the departure on the 16th. And that we should prepare for that potentiality. We don't know yet if that is going to be the case, but that's honestly about 2 hours ago we found this out. So we are working on some different scenarios that I will be absolutely candid with everybody, range a spectrum from having to cancel the trip all the way to the bus coming back and pretending we never had this part of the conversation. So that we're at every place on the spectrum between those 2 points. We are fairly confident that if need be, like we did with Oregon last year, we might be able to pivot and find a way to carry forward now that we have a Rolodex full of alternative transportation options after the Oregon experience. So we are going to work up those possibilities, and we will probably have more to share this week once we kind of know what is going to happen. At this point, though, and we'll talk a little bit about this later on, if we did need to bring different transportation into the mix, it either could impact our ability to offer the trips as originally scheduled, but it also could impact potentially the cost of the trip, depending, or for sure within that contingency cost. So I'll revisit that a little bit later when we talk about some of the finances of the trip. But I do have to be transparent that when we talk about transportation, I thought we were much more certain about what that would look like this morning than I am this afternoon. Okay. So there we are. Everything else we're pretty certain about. So the accommodations, this is a 4 different sleeping spot trip. So we break our journey towards the Rockies with a stay just outside of Revelstoke on the way there at the very strange, magical, and wondrous Three Valley Gap Chateau, which if you've ever been to Alberta, I'm sure you've driven by. No one ever stops there. We stopped there that very first trip many years ago, and now we can't imagine not going there because it is an experience. It's actually a pretty amazing place. And then we will spend 3 nights in Lake Louise and 2 nights in Banff. The 2 trips are identical in itinerary and activities. The only difference, if you've scrutinized the details closely enough, is the sequence of Banff and Lake Louise are flipped between the 2 trips for availability reasons. But otherwise, other than that, they are identical. So we have the 5 nights in the Rockies and then 1 night in Revelstoke on the way home. Oh, I should go back for a second and just share, similar to Oregon, accommodation is shared, and people did really well with that last time, and we will have different combinations of people sharing different spaces. And the hostels, which we've stayed in many times, they're called hostels, but honestly, they're closer to hotels. They're actually, if anyone's ever stayed at the Banff or Lake Louise hostels, they're super nice. Unlike Oregon, you do not need to bring linen or even towels. All of that is provided. They're pretty nice, actually. We're very comfortable there. Meals. As we said before, please inform us in advance of dietary requirements. Usually we don't like to cater too much to just straight preference, but if you have strong dislikes that verge on preferences, we'd love to have a little bit more information in that regard than maybe we normally would because of these next 2 points here. We will be going to some restaurants, so like Oregon, you'll make menu selections in advance. You'll have a range of options and choose what makes you happy, but we will also be eating many of our meals what we call picnic style, meaning your teachers will cater for you. So we did this a little bit in Oregon when we had some lunches that we would sort of put out the spread for you. On this trip, for practical reasons and honestly for economical reasons, we do this maybe a little bit more frequently than any other trip that we do. So picnic meals, there are often fewer options. We plan something in advance that we think, with options that we think appeals to many. But if we need to accommodate, like we said, a dietary need or requirement, or even if we know that everybody loves this but nobody likes that, then we will not buy that. So if we have some more information is better than no information, feel free to, we'll talk about this in class, but you can send Emily some of that information. Like Oregon, we would strongly request that parents do not send snacks. We know that there are some exceptions to that, mitigating circumstances or dietary needs and requirements. That's totally fine. So just let teachers know, but we'd ask people not to bring snacks, candy, etc. Other teachers, if you would wish to jump in or add anything at any time, please do so. Okay.
I was going to add a couple of questions, Brian. The itinerary will be available soon. So once we add you to the project in Basecamp, then you'll be able to add it to your calendars. Students, learners, and parents, like Brian said, it will appear in Parent Central. The number of people per room, we just stress, even though it's a hostel, you'll only be with Seacove kids. Okay, so you'll only be with each other, and it's only sex assigned at birth that you'll be with. So people assigned female birth will be with females, people assigned male birth will be with males, and you won't be with females or males that aren't from Seacove or teachers. Okay, I think that is right.
Yeah, the number varies because there actually are various configurations, but it's usually about 4.
It's usually about 4, sometimes 6, and once we had a hostel room that was 8. But yeah, somewhere between 4 and 6.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, on the packing list, very similar to Oregon, we will have limited space. So we're asking you to pack as economically as possible. And I got to say, people for Oregon did a fantastic job with that. So I'm convinced you'll do a great job again. For sure, you'll need your iPad and make sure you bring your charger. So that's your main tool of work. You will absolutely need that. We're going to some of the most beautiful places on the planet. So if you are a photography enthusiast and you want to bring a camera other than your phone or your iPad, that's encouraged. If you are someone who's trusted with something like that, great. That would be fantastic. If you're just bringing your phone or iPad, that's also totally fine. So you might want to think about that. We'll talk about the climate and clothing in just a second. You will need a bathing suit if you want to swim in possibly the most bizarre swimming pool in the history of hotel accommodation at Three Valley Gap. It's just a regular pool, but it's themed. And I'll just leave it at that because you will never guess the theme for the swimming pool.
The most natural and unique place. And the most natural and unique place.
Which is?
For the hot springs.
Yeah, so we will have actually quite a few opportunities to use your bathing suit. So the 2 hotels on either side have pools, and then in Banff at the hot springs as well. So if you want to, I would encourage you to bring your bathing suit. And a small amount of spending money for souvenirs. So like Oregon, we will be going to many a gift shop, or places where you could buy some nice souvenirs for yourself, or a small gift for a family member or something like that. So if you want to do that, you can. We will be in Canada the whole time, so you could probably use Interac or like debit cards without problems. I know in the States that was confusing to many students who just assumed they could tap to pay things, and Americans have no idea what you're talking about. But don't expect to be able to go to an ATM to get cash. We'll just say that. We are requesting and requiring that students have what we're calling trail runners or light trail shoes of some kind. And we've already told the kids, and we already sent an email saying we're going to request that you bring these to school on Friday. Or if you don't have them yet for Friday, no need to panic. They can be next week as well. But we want to actually have them brought to school so they can be visually seen by a teacher and we can sign off on them. Okay. So what are we talking about? We are going to be doing a lot, like almost daily, of outdoor activity, light to moderate hiking. To see these amazing, wondrous places that we're going to visit, you have to often put in a little effort to get there. More than pays off. But it does require you to make sure you have appropriate footwear. So we're looking at something kind of like what's in these pictures. What we're most interested in is something with tread and a little bit of support. It does not have to be a serious hiking boot. This is not mountaineering, nothing technical required. Even just a really good running shoe that has tread is okay, but it should not be like a skate shoe or a tennis shoe or something that does not have, that's just flat with no tread. So that's kind of what we just want to verify. Just like we asked for evidence that you actually had rubber boots for Oregon, this is going to be the shoe that you are going to use every day for the hiking. Ms. Bess is asking about Blundstones, and I would say no, they are not acceptable. Great shoe for wearing afterwards around town and for the rest of the time. Students, the reason we're getting so hardcore with this is because last year we specifically had students that did not have appropriate footwear, or actually a few kids that just had the Blundstones and they paid the price for them. I know they'll claim, oh, they're the most comfortable shoe. Okay, you will not be happy with them for this type of activity. So we would ask you to have some kind of light trail shoe, something with ankle support, something with grip. Okay. We are pretty open-minded and open-ended on what that looks like, but I don't know. Do I need to answer any more questions, or anyone want to chime in? Petra, what did we see last time that was problematic?
Flip-flops, no. Crocs, no. We saw Adidas, Pumas, those kind of things. No, they don't work. It's just not a good enough grip. And what happens is you have to remember that these are serious mountains and we're high up. So it does get like rocky. It's literally called the Rockies, and you will slip, and that gets scary. Not that you're like at cliff edge or dangerous or anything, but it just can hurt, and that's not fun for anyone. So yeah. And I just emphasize, because you're starting to get the idea that this is a little like the yurts in Oregon, but it's even more removed, right? We're not even, there's no Fred Meyer even, right? Like, so it is a situation where this is not about your fashion or dressing nice or putting on lots of makeup. You do not want to have to get up early and do all that, because you're going to want to make sure that you're just organized to enjoy the outdoors.
Yeah. It goes to the health and safety. You just want to be like super comfortable and have the right equipment. Yeah, Emily's just confirmed that, yeah, you do not need to bring a sleeping bag. Linen is all provided. All right, what not to bring, kind of the same list that we went through before. We'd ask you not to bring a large suitcase, especially now that we are not 100% sure like how we're going to configure this stuff, our luggage in what vehicle we have. So something probably that can fit under your seat like before. Don't bring anything that is super valuable, or that if it did get lost or damaged, that, you know, would be irreplaceable. Don't bring food, don't bring candy. Absolutely do not bring laptops, gaming devices, things like that. You will not have time or the energy to use them. Do not bring Bluetooth speakers.
And I would just echo again, don't bring the AirPods because they're just too easy to lose. Wired headphones are better. And please don't bring your giant headphones. It just blocks you out and you don't need them.
Yeah. I see a question.
You don't need them either.
I see a question about bringing a pillow. I think totally that's fine. Probably like you would maybe make you comfortable on the bus or however we're traveling. And if you sleep better with your own pillow, why not? Okay, no problem. The weather looks decent. Last year we had pretty much very similar. I just pulled this today. So this is sort of 14-day trend. So the first trip is within view here. And you can see this is kind of like what we experienced last time. We had some really nice warm days, not hot, but warm days and cool nights. So I would just caution people to make sure you are keeping an eye on what the weather is like. It is cooled down quite a bit here as well. So if it was really warm here, sometimes you get confused that, you know, it might be summer where we're going. As Petra says, we are going to the mountains. It definitely is going to be cool at night. You should be prepared, though, and pack for all kinds of options. So it could be really warm if it's warm and sunny in the daytime, could be cool at night. You should have layers. A pair of shorts probably should be in your bag, but you need to not have no pants. You will need pants as well, and be able to like dress in layers. Last time we hiked up somewhere and it was super hot and sweaty on the hike up there, but as soon as we got to the top, it was super windy and cold, and everyone that had brought like their zip up jacket and hoodie, you know, was very happy to be able to pull it on when you got to the top. So you got to be prepared kind of for all eventualities. So we'll talk more specifically in class, but as you're starting to get ready and pack and think, you want to make sure that you are bringing the clothing that's going to make you feel comfortable and happy. So we have put together
on that point, Brian, just to re-emphasize, we have had an opportunity where we have been on this trip in September and it has snowed. And I'm not saying it was like sticking or anything, but it can get cool enough. So you just got to have layers and be prepared for that.
We will be outside rain or shine every single day. So that's why you want to like be prepared. I don't anticipate it being very cold or very wet. So, but you want to like have a nice little shell. I mean, we're all from here, for West Coast. We know how the weather works. Okay, and lastly, there is a separate dedicated packing reminders page on the Field School portal that summarizes a lot of the information we just shared. As anything that comes up, we will add it there, but I would encourage you to go check that out. And that again is at Parent Central. All right. Just our standard slides here about communication. So parents, soon I will be sending out after we summarize this meeting tonight with the link to the recording, invitations to join a special dedicated WhatsApp group for each of the field schools, which we will use. Turned out we needed you came in very handy last year, when, especially on the second trip when we needed to communicate updates around the bus situation. So this is a very easy way for the teachers to communicate with parents more immediately and en masse. Formal updates will send email to our email lists as well, but we would encourage you to join that those groups when you get that email. Just a reminder that you can contact parents whenever you wish, or for any reason. It doesn't have to be an emergency, and we can coordinate communication between you and your child if you have not heard from your child for a few times, or they're ignoring you or not answering you. We can happily be that intermediary. Or if you think there's something we need to know, we would strongly encourage parents to do that. Sometimes what we see and what students are presenting publicly is different than the experience they are communicating to parents, like privately or through messaging. So we would encourage parents to reach out to us. Just let us know what they're hearing. If there's something going on that we may or may not be aware of, we're happy to have a discourse around that during the trip. We would just remind you that we might not be able to answer. So if we're driving or in a situation where we can't answer, you may need to leave a message. You can always, of course, text or email. And on this trip too, there are many times where we will be outside of service areas. So just be aware of that. You might need to leave a message, and it may be hours before we get back to you. And it doesn't necessarily mean anything is up. It's just because of the nature of our activity. With students, same thing. We're in Canada the whole time, so we anticipate most students will probably have a phone with them, and they will probably have a data connection if they have one on their phones. That's not a problem, but we would really encourage parents to not create any set expectations around contact at arranged times, because our schedule, although it will be kind of established, we'll have that in Basecamp, so you can kind of look ahead and find out when students might be able to contact you. Things could change, or the availability of Wi-Fi or a cellular connection can be variable. So just make sure, and it can also sometimes be anxiety provoking for both the parent or the child if things that they think are going to happen can't happen. So we would just suggest that students are encouraged to contact their parents when they have Wi-Fi, which will be nightly in the public areas of the hostels, sometimes in their room at the hostel, but not always, depending on circumstance. But certainly there is public access to Wi-Fi at least once a day. The other thing too is, like, part of the reason we're going away for a field school is to be away. So students are working and learning during the day. So we think it's a great idea for parents, siblings, friends to give them that space and for them to experience being a distance from home. So although the technology enables a constant tether, in our experience, that's not always necessarily a positive thing. In fact, sometimes some space and separation is actually a benefit. So we would say the opportunity to embrace that. We will be up. Go ahead.
Just a side note for all of you who do track your children on Find My, or you're looking at like your friends or something, don't be surprised if they don't move for hours or drop off the radar altogether. So we had some parents in Alberta last year who were quite surprised by that, but there are a lot of dead zones in this area. And so I know that people who were tracking each other were suddenly surprised, like, why hasn't my kid moved in 4 hours? And then suddenly they leaped another 50K up the road or something like that. So things like that can happen in when the cell service is spotty.
Yes, and yes, Doug.
If he did not see the chat there, he asked where in Lake Louise area, Lake Maureen, Lake Agnes, and Brian said yes.
Yes. Okay, we will be updating our Instagram daily from the road. So look for photo updates, look for, what do you call them? Lives? No, I guess sometimes we do a live, but no, the story. Yes, the story. On the paperwork front, right now we only know of 3 required pieces of paperwork. This is all posted in Parent Central on the portal, and we are going to ask parents to find that and start returning it to the school ASAP, especially if you are on the first trip. Miss McWilliam will be collating and tracking that down. So you can give it to any of us, but probably if you give it to her, it'll be most expeditiously checked off. So that's the informed consent document. The medical form, a medical form has to be filled out for every trip. So even though you did one previously for Oregon, we need it again. And the Golden Skybridge waiver form. So we're going to do some exciting activities on our last day, and that's just their legal waiver form. I would note on that there's 2 pages for that waiver. There is a place for your initials on the first page that's easy to miss, or the parents' initials. It's easy to miss, and then a child name and parent signature on the second page of that. So those 3 documents are available now on the portal. They can, if you don't have the ability to print them at home, we are happy to print them for you and send them home for you to bring back. So you can look for those. Payment. So the third payment was going to go live mere moments before we had our bus news today. So we just put a small pause on it just in the chaos of the moment. So that'll sort of that will appear soon-ish in School Cash Online, and that system will send you a notification that the third of the 3 payments is available. I'm not sure when that's going to happen yet, but maybe tomorrow, who knows. We would ask, if you have not made the other 2 payments yet, that you please do that. The full payment must be made prior to departure. And I think most people have done that. So I appreciate that. And thank you very much. The cost of the trip, I did some very, very quick rough napkin math today, and sort of based on the estimated cost of, if we had to, for example, rent a 15-passenger van as we did for Oregon, it's roughly, we figure about the same cost, would probably fall within the budget that we already charged within that contingency. So this is not a promise in any way, but just figuring it out, it looks like, things can still be whole within that. And we would hope to continue to deliver this trip within that cost, or even under that cost, if all things work out. But we will know more as we sort of figure out what that looks like, and we're going to redouble our efforts tomorrow on getting some quotes for what that would look like. So we'll update as we know more, but that's the issue with around payment. All right, that is the formal content that I have prepared to share. If any of the teachers want to chime in, or if Sarah wants to chime in on anything that I may have missed, we will answer questions. And then if people are too shy, I will also stop the recording at a certain part, and we can have some questions without recording. Is there any questions from the chat that I may have missed? You are muted, Petra.
There's a hand up. There was a hand up.
I do not see a hand up.
It is Esther.
Oh, Esther.
Esther. Okay.
So I just had a question about like the hotel rooms. How many people per hotel room will there be?
I'm trying to discern like how many you're hoping it's going to be. I'm gonna say, okay, I'll just get to it will be a maximum in the hotels, which is just the first night and the last night. It would be a maximum of 4. So I already know, I can't remember what trip you're on, but in some cases it's going to be 3 or 4.
We had a question from the chat, Brian. Which teachers are going on which trip and how many?
That's a good question. So prior to this afternoon, I'll tell you how it was going to structure it. I will be going on both trips, and Ms. Willems and Mr. Harris and I would be on the first trip, Rocky's 1, and Ms. Caddy and Ms. McWilliam and I would be on the second trip, Rocky's 2. Now, only Ms. McWilliam and I can drive more than 6 people in a vehicle because of our Class 4 licenses. So if we have to change up the transportation scenarios, that would then also potentially, well, probably will change up the composition of teachers involved. So that's a long way of saying it will be some combination of the 5 of us, 3 teachers on each trip.
Cindy has a question, Brian.
Sorry, about like the is because in the Oregon trip we had quests. Is that a thing that is carrying into the grade 9 trip?
That is a uniquely Oregon activity. If there should be Rocky Mountain quests. That would be incredible, but there's not. Yes, I'm seeing some thumbs up. Yeah, there is not. We did not. You may or may not know, we did not create or make those. Those are created by a different group of people on the Oregon coast that we use and enjoy. So there's not something exactly the same for Alberta. Actually, maybe that should be a great project. We should get you guys to do that.
We've all said that should be a project for even Deep Cove. There should be a Cove quest.
You will be, once you learn more about the project, which is going to start happening like tomorrow, and then of course next week before the first trip goes, there will be activities and things you will be doing at pretty much every stop that are either humanities project related or maker project related. So you'll be definitely busy, and that includes both like when we go to some place like a museum or some kind of outdoor activity, or even on the hikes and we're in the parks and things like that. I always say this, and you guys don't know it yet, but you'll see, we're on the shoulder season, or sort of the tail end of like the peak of tourist season, but you'll see there are lots of tourists, most of them from all over the world, and they have traveled like from Europe and Japan and China to like come and go and do the exact things you are going to do. And you will be amazed. So it's gonna be fantastic.
Okay, Brian, we got lots of questions.
Will you
be needing out of province extended medical health info as well?
We don't need the same formal proof of coverage that we need when we cross the border. So I don't think we'll be collecting that.
Will we be hiking every day?
Esther, again, I think she wants me to say yes, and I would say almost yes.
And when do we get to pick our menu choices?
Soon. Before the weekend, probably. You'll go into the weekend with that to do over the weekend.
Okay.
They may not want the hiking, and they may not want the groups, Brian. You may be going the opposite direction with your answers. They will tell you what they want and what they don't like.
Oh, they tell us. Right, guys?
I think this is true.
This is true. See, there you go. There you go.
You know what Henry Ford said, right?
Mm-hmm.
He said if he asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse.
Because Henry Ford made cars. Just trying to help. Oh, I'm having flashbacks to teaching online. Let's wrap this up.
All right, I'm going to thank everybody for your attention and participation. I'm going to stop the recording. If you are watching this recorded and you had additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us via email or your various channels. We'll be happy to answer.